Reports from Lauderhill, Florida.
Votes are finally being counted here in Broward. They're starting with the ballots cast during the state's 2-week-long early voting period. That's about 200,000 votes. The county's elections chief, Brenda Snipes, is refuting claims by President Trump that she's including illegal ballots.
Well, I don't have a treasure trove for going out digging on the beaches somewhere to find any votes, but I've never had an opportunity to meet the president.
But Snipes says they will complete their recounting by Thursday's deadline. In Lauderhill, Florida, Eben Brown, Fox News.
President Donald Trump has soured on Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, and she is expected to leave her job as soon as this week. That's according to two people who spoke to the Associated Press on condition of anonymity. Nielsen had hoped to complete 1 year in the job and leave in December, but it appears unlikely she'll make it. Trump has blamed Nielsen for not doing more to address illegal immigration at the southern border. The state of Maryland is challenging President Trump's pick to temporarily lead the Justice Department. Here's Fox's Rachel Sutherland.
The New York Times reports the state will ask a federal judge for an injunction today declaring Matthew Whitaker's appointment illegal. In a draft filing, the plaintiffs argue that Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein is the rightful acting Attorney General. Meanwhile, Whitaker is consulting with senior ethics officials at the Justice Department about recusing himself from the Russia probe. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
A policy analyst says both conservatives and liberals need to be concerned about a recent survey among college students that shows they think silencing speakers on campus is okay. Bob Kellogg explains why.
This is something that people on both sides need to be aware of, that we've got to protect the right to free expression because it's important for people on both sides.
He says colleges and universities need to communicate to students that things are going to change for them when they leave campus for their chosen careers.
I think that the adults on campus need to explain to students that this kind of behavior simply won't be accepted when they leave campus and go off into the working world.
The Daily Signal reports the survey was conducted by McLaughlin and Associates, which polled a nationally representative population of 800 undergraduate students. I'm Bob Kellogg.
California regulators say initial testing has found no elevated levels of radiation or hazardous compounds after Southern California's huge wildfire burned near a former nuclear test site in hills to the northwest of Los Angeles. The State Department of Toxic Substance Control says staff went to the Santa Susana Field Laboratory on Saturday and found the facilities that handled radioactive and hazardous materials were not affected by the fire. Next week will kick off the holiday travel period, and this year is expected to be the busiest season on record. Todd Hopley is the Chief Executive Officer of American Association of Airport Executives. He says to remain calm during long wait periods and to enjoy the holidays.
You're traveling this holiday season. Give yourself a little extra time. Pack a little serenity. And enjoy life with family and friends on a journey made possible by the miracle of modern aviation.
More than 25 million people are expected to travel during the days before and just after Thanksgiving. That's a 5% increase from last year. And it's not fake news. KFC is offering chicken and waffles nationwide through December 31st. No word yet on whether the waffles are original recipe or extra crispy. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
We need you to call your senators today. Tell them to put an end to the liberals' filibuster, switch to a majority vote, and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference. Call the Capitol switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Again, call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacey on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I don't think it's too much to ask for guns, Second Amendment right, and sense with it. We have to stop pretending that the Second Amendment is the amendment above all that's sacrosanct?
Well, we will certainly pursue sensible gun control legislation as one of our priorities. You know, we're getting to the point now where we're having mass shootings every week. It's hardly news.
We're also seeing solidly red states like Utah, Idaho, and Nebraska vote in favor of Medicaid expansion, which indicates that people want more health care, not less. And I strongly believe as a physician that health care has to be a fundamental human right, and that women's health care is health care.
Illegal immigrant was released from Middlesex County there and came right here to the Midwest, right here in southwest Missouri, and killed 3 people. And that's just another classic case where we could have saved 3 lives, and we have 3 innocent people that are no longer here because sanctuary cities and sanctuary counties.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Welcome to the program. Stacey Washington, co-chair of National Center's Project 21 National Advisory Council. I'm also the host of this program and so much more we have going on today. It's a pleasure to be with you. Please share the show. If you are live streaming us on one of our different live streams that we have going on YouTube or Periscope or Facebook, share the show. Let people know what you're enjoying so they can enjoy it too. And welcome into our listeners across the country on all of our terrestrial radio stations. Thank you so much for being with us. I want to remind you that this is collection week for Operation Christmas Child. It's October 22nd to November 11th. This is collection week. So you can go to SamaritansPurse.org/OCC, SamaritansPurse.org/OCC, and find a collection site, one of the 5,000 that's located really close to you, no matter where you are in the country. There's a site near you where you can drop off your donations or your box, or drop off a donation to help get those boxes where they're going to go, and partner with us. Thank you so much for your ears and for helping with that for Christmas, Operation Christmas Child. So today on the program, we're going to be speaking to Karol Markowicz. She's a columnist for the New York Post, and the subject is going to be the mob, specifically the mob that attacked Tucker Carlson's home, but also he's actually been experiencing attacks on his children and his family in public and private spaces. And so we're going to talk about that with Karol. She's been on the program before. We really enjoy her time here. And then we're going to get into this new Planned Parenthood president. She's new. She's taking over from Cecile Richardson, and she's very enthusiastic about the business of aborting babies. And she has a lot to say about what she calls health care. She calls it health care, not women's health care, but simply health care. And her concern that this Supreme Court, with the 2 newly installed Supreme Court justices, Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, would overturn Roe v. Wade. So we'll be discussing that, and a new study that's out that shows that Christian women are actually a significant portion of the number of women who are having abortions in this country, and what that means for the messaging that the church is putting out and the gospel and all of that. Super important conversation. We'll be taking your calls during that segment as well. You can call in and join the conversation at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. So let's get into our daily confession. Today, we're going to talk about Philippians 1:9, and this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight. So we've got to be praying for each other. And I want to also share with you 2 Corinthians 1:11. As you help us by your prayers, then many will give thanks on our behalf for the gracious favor granted us in answer to the prayers of many. So this is about interceding for others. It's about praying for people. And if you're anything like me, you've got people who've annoyed you, or maybe, whatever the case might be. The details are inconsequential. And what you want to do is you want to be angry, or you want to hold on to it. But instead, what you can do is intercede on their behalf. And this can be for a specific person, or it can be for cities, interceding on behalf of your city. If you live in a place like we do here in St. Louis, where we have a lot of really ingrained systemic problems that aren't easily fixed, then we go to the Lord in prayer. We pray over this city. We pray for unity among the churches, pray for many people who do not know the Lord to come to know him in a real and true way, really to know the saving gospel of Jesus Christ, and for their lives to be changed by it, the direction of their lives to be shifted in a major way that is unmistakably the work of the cross, and things like that. So people that you pray for, you have a hard time being angry with. People that you pray for, you can't pray for someone and hate them at the same time. But if it's not hate or anger, if it's just a simple kind of ambivalence, praying for groups of people, cities, neighborhoods, churches, specific people, it can soften your heart towards them and bring us into the true knowledge of what God has for us to do as the hands and feet of Christ. We are to pray for each other and to lift each other up in prayer. And so I have just the utmost faith in intercessory prayer and what it can do for us. It's kind of a selfish thing. You're praying for others, knowing that God is going to bless you for it. So I want to give you a couple of more scripture references. Psalm 119:66 says, "Teach me good judgment and knowledge, for I believe in your commandments." And God commands us to pray for each other, especially in the body of Christ, where we have so many needs and God is constantly moving. We can see someone in need and pray for them and intercede on their behalf, knowing that God will answer our prayers and will bless them as well. Colossians 1:9 says, "For this reason, since the day we heard about you, we have not stopped praying for you and asking God to fill you with the knowledge of his will and all spiritual wisdom and understanding." Woo! I want people to pray for me like that. All right, so that's the daily confession for today. Now I want to talk about something awesome. I love it when I have good news to share. And this is the kind of good news that a lot of people will discount because they really feel like, the more government, the better. But I'm here to tell you, we know from firsthand accounts, we know from statistics, we know from the research and deep dives that anthropologists do into the lives of Americans, that being connected to the government for your subsistence, for your very basic needs, is a drag on not just you as an individual, but on your whole family. And it can really seriously impede your ability to plug into and take advantage of the American dream. And remember, if illegal immigrants are coming here from far and wide, hither and yon, and coming into this country and starting businesses and working under the table and making themselves a part of the American dream, how much more so should you be able to do it if you are an American citizen already and you don't have the encumberment of not being here legally? How much more should we be able to take advantage of the economy when we can work not under the table, but right over the top of the table? We can work legitimately. So it's a lie from the pit of hell that any group of people can't make it in this country. It's individual choice that determines what we can do. And that's why this is such good news. It's food stamp recipients down 4,123,082 people less under President Trump. Now think about what we're saying here. If you're receiving food stamps, that means you're living at or below the poverty level, and you're getting a certain amount of money allocated to you based on your family size, with which you can take that card and access that money to buy food. So you're at you're the primary target for government programs. And if you're accessing that, you're probably having a few other programs that are being offered to you, and you're accessing those as well to help you get over the basic, just your basic needs. CNSnews.com is reporting that the number of persons and households participating in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, what we all call, in parlance, food stamps, which is the SNAP program, has declined by over 4 million people since December of 2016. This is according to newly released data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, as the food stamp program comes underneath the Farm Bill and the Ag Department. So you've got the last full month that President Barack Obama was in office, there were almost 43 million people on food stamps, according to USDA. As of August of 2018, that number is at 38.8 million. That's a significant drop. The last time food stamp participation was lower than it is this August was 9 years ago in November of 2009, when it was just shy of that, about 700,000 less than what it is now. In December of 2009, it rose to about 100,000 more than it is now and had not dropped below that level until July of this year. Now, the number of persons on food stamps peaked in December of 2012 at 47.7 million. And since that peak, the number of persons on food stamps has dropped by almost 9 million people. Now, to give you a idea of the scope that we're talking about here, the number fewer that we have right now, 4.1 million, is less than the population of Missouri by about 1 million. But that high number, where we've dropped from that high of 47.7 million by 8.9 million, that is a significant number of Americans who are no longer relying on the government to eat. That also means, because you have to, it's not just, hey, I need to make an extra $300 more a month, so I don't need government food stamps. When they take those away, then you're also absorbing the cost of not having the food stamp money, but you've got the raise and you have an increase in how much income tax you owe. So your federal withholding. So when people are coming off of food stamps, they have significantly improved their income and their work. Everything in their life has improved significantly for them to say, you know what, I don't need this anymore. I feel strong enough to make it without this, not just without it, but and having it reduced, but completely off of the food stamp program. Now, a lot of Democrats are out talking right now, talking about their so-called blue wave. There's this, I was on Al Sharpton's show, my one and only hit on MSNBC, my first and probably the last time I'll ever be on their network, which was Sunday. I went on Al Sharpton's Politics Nation, and he called it a blue wave. Now, if numbers don't matter to you, you can call anything that you want. If you don't believe in statistics and charts and graphs and that math is math and that it's a language, it's not something that's subjective to our interpretation, then sure, the Democrats had a blue wave. But if you're living in, upside up land, in other words, you believe that words have meaning, they didn't have a blue wave. And on top of not having a blue wave, they now have to watch as President Trump fills the remainder of the Supreme Court openings that are going to appear before the end of his first term. And he's going to continue to pack the courts with constitutional textualist judges who do not believe the Constitution is a living, breathing document. So, of course, the Democrats have said they want to help out with pre-existing conditions and lower the cost of drugs, but simultaneously they want to launch investigations into everything, that what the president eats, what time he goes to bed at night, his tax returns, and any individual that has taken a role in government that they don't like, they're going to try to investigate those individuals. Now, they do have power over the purse. They have oversight. And we watched as the last time they took control, they were very, very heavy-handed and strong about making sure that they got what needed to be done to ensure the reelection of Barack Obama. They're now going to take that same fervor and they're going to work their little fingers to the bone to make sure that they can ensure the election of a Democrat in 2020. A woman will be the vice presidential candidate and the man will be Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden. That's just what I see. Now, I could be wrong. Hey, I don't know. But that's what my research tells me, that they're going to go with someone that is able to withstand the onslaught that is President Trump in campaign mode. Now, let's harken back just a minute here, okay? Because when today's show is Dems House agenda, the Democrats' House agenda, it's extreme violence with prejudice. And they have already normalized violence. It started with Occupy Wall Street. It was cemented with Ferguson and Baltimore and the inner city burnings that happened with Black Lives Matter. Now we have the institutionalization of that violence because the people who are directing it are now members of government and the elite. You have Maxine Waters. You have others in the very top echelons of the Democratic Party saying, it is too much for us. You have Hillary Clinton saying, we'll be civil when we're in charge. All of these individuals, Eric Holder, when they go low, kick them. Not kick them in the shins. He didn't say kick them in the shins. He said kick them. This is their new rallying cry. We're not in charge. We don't have power. And so we're going to be violent. We're going to run you out of restaurants. We're going to chase you out of gas stations. We're going to chase you down the street. If we see your child in a country club, we're going to call her names you can't say on TV and radio. And we're going to make her cry. We're going to make her leave the country club. And then when you come over and you confront us about it, we're going to say you assaulted us. That's one of the stories we'll be discussing with Karol Markowicz in the next segment. Tucker Carlson's family is under a full-blown assault. And this is by Antifa and their different arms. They call themselves, Smash Racism DC and all these other cute little names they've made up so they can make T-shirts. But they are all the militaristic wing of the Democrats, which is Antifa. And I see it often, and I'll just say this as an aside before I get back to these details. Well, there's the music. If you in your heart think there's some justification for public figures to have their children attacked in public, you have bigger problems than I can help you with on a radio show. That's wrong. We'll get into that and more with Karol Markowicz after these messages. You stay right there. Stacey on the Right.
Lynn Ingram of Redeem Clean felt God call him to support the American Family Association.
I'm a laundryman. I'm the son of a laundryman, too. I love clean clothes. I love the business. I love everything about it. This project was built exclusively to support AFA and AFR. There's no strings attached. Another thing that I would like to see come out of this is that I would like to see other business people feel a calling to support ministries wherever and whatever they do to share the gospel of Jesus Christ.
In addition to your regular AFA giving, Redeem Clean Laundry Detergent allows you to increase your support of AFA just by continuing to wash your family's clothes. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more, find options, and get Redeem Clean products at redeemclean.afastore.net. That's redeemclean.afastore.net.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. Some time ago, I attended a funeral where my friend Michael Easley gave the message. His words were deeply moving. He honed in on the purpose and meaning of life and stressed that one day, life as we know it would come to an end. He compared this life to a tent that is only temporary. His words challenged all of us not to waste our lives. Funerals are great opportunities to get us to think about what is really important in life. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 2 and verse 4 speak to this whole issue of death as an instrument of wisdom. Listen to these words. It is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting, because that is the end of every man, and the living takes it to heart. Now verse 4. The mind of the wise is in the house of mourning, while the mind of fools is in the house of pleasure. Let me make 3 observations about these 2 verses. One is that death puts us in touch with reality. Death is like cold water splashed on our face. Secondly, death magnifies the need for purpose and meaning. When you go to a funeral, you're struck with reality. Did this person live a meaningful, purposeful life, or did they just kind of throw it away? Number 3, fools are passionate about meaningless pursuits. That is what the text says. The mind of fools is in the house of pleasure. Here's what I want you to remember and maybe even think about today. If you knew you were going to die tomorrow, how would you live today? We should not live our lives with a sense of gloom, but we should live our lives wisely pursuing God's purposes and plans.
Crawford Loritz is senior pastor of Fellowship Bible Church in suburban Atlanta, Georgia. For more information, go to livingalegacy.org. livingalegacy.org. Legacy Moment is a production of Moody Radio.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Did you miss me on Making Money with Charles Payne on Fox Business just a little bit ago? Well, you can catch that on the Roku channel for Fox Business. You can catch all the clips of their frequent guests. They had me on to talk about the prison reform package that is currently under bipartisan consideration. And it's called the First Step Act. And we've actually had guests on the program to talk about it. And I have actually become a convert to at least the idea that we have to look at ways to reduce recidivism, and then it's time to take a second look at that. I understand that there's some concern from law enforcement that we, don't want to encourage violent offenders to reoffend, and I certainly am not in that category as a supporter of law enforcement because my father is in law enforcement. I certainly don't want to give off that impression, but we do need to, regardless of political party, consider the fact that when someone makes a mistake like that, especially for these first-time offenders who are not violent offenders, these individuals need an opportunity to become functioning members of society again, and whatever we can do to incentivize that should be a priority for us as a country, looking after our citizens, even the ones who've made these kinds of mistakes. So right now, it's my pleasure to welcome frequent guest on the program. We haven't spoken to her in a bit, but this is going to be great to catch up. Karol Markowicz, she's a columnist for the New York Post. Karol, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Stacy. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. I'm actually, this is the subject that you're bringing today. I have been so concerned about this, and not because Tucker Carlson is some, wallflower who can't care for himself, but I was really appalled by the story where the mob actually comes to his home under the guise of protest, and they vandalized his home, cracked the front door, vandalized the vehicles in the driveway itself, and the exterior of the home, and frightened his wife, who was locked in a pantry, dialing 911. Talk to us about your piece on this. You wrote a really good piece about this story.
Yeah, I think it's a terrible thing that happened to the Carlson family, and beyond that, I think it's a real threat to our freedom of speech. Freedom of speech specifically is speech that is not threatened by violence, and the state's role is to an example of a mob trying to shut Tucker Carlson's speech down, and we need to all stand up and say that this is unacceptable.
So I just want to make sure people understand this isn't about them being out in public someplace and protesters confronting them in public. This is their actual private residence in a residential neighborhood. Is it in D.C. or is it in Maryland? I was kind of unsure in the story.
Yeah, I think it's in Maryland that they live. And, that's exactly the point to me. We've had Fox talk show hosts like Brian Kilmeade got harassed on the subway. And, I think all of that is atrocious, but it's a different universe from coming to somebody's house and threatening their wife and scaring their family. I mean, thankfully his 4 kids weren't home at the time, but it's just a different level of abuse. And I think it's, again, one that we absolutely can't stand for. Screaming something at somebody on the subway is one thing. Attacking their private home is something else entirely.
It is, but I want to point out that what happened to Brian Kilmeade was 2 individuals who have a Netflix show actually tried to incite a mob against Brian Kilmeade, and he was alone. So, I mean,
yes,
it's certainly, and you described it correctly. It's horrific. It's awful, but it still doesn't rise to the level of the person's spouse and possibly the kids. Luckily, in this instance, the children weren't there. But you've got the wife home alone, right? She hears what sounds like a home invasion. The door is being, rammed, and it cracks. She locks herself in the pantry and dials 911. Now,
it's actually amazing that they didn't consider that Tucker might be home and have a weapon and use that weapon on somebody that he thinks is invading his home. It's not a crazy possibility.
No, it's not.
They didn't consider it.
It's not. And I know you're in New York, correct?
Right.
So I'm broadcasting from Missouri. Not only is our state a castle doctrine state, but we also have stand your ground. So I don't have to have 2 feet in the door anymore. Like the rule before we had the stand your ground law was the person had to have 2 feet in the door and you had to believe your life was in danger, and then you can defend yourself. You don't no longer have to retreat to the farthest room in your home and hide before confronting the individual. All they have to do is be in the house and all bets are off. So that's castle doctrine.
It was Biden who actually recommended shooting through doors if you feel threatened.
Well, he said, get on your front porch and fire a gun into the air, which is absolutely not legal. Even if you have castle doctrine, you're not allowed to discharge a weapon. You have to actually shoot it in the belief that you're defending yourself. But in the stand your ground state, the fact that they were in the driveway defacing property and had attempted to enter the home by battering the door would be enough for her to defend herself. So, I mean, there's very serious ramifications here, Carol. I'm not suggesting anything. I certainly don't want to see people hurt.
I'm just saying they should worry about that kind of behavior and not expect that nothing will happen to them. They're possibly in danger themselves, and they don't even seem to realize it.
But why wasn't anyone arrested? The story is that after they've done all of this damage, they've cracked the door. The police arrive and disperse the crowd. I can't imagine that happening here in Missouri. Everyone there would have been arrested.
Right. I don't know what would happen in New York. I don't have extremely high hopes for what would happen here. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think, again, it's an invasion of private property as soon as they were on their grounds. I think it's taking it way too far, and they should have been arrested.
So at this point, we're talking about this has already happened. I don't know if you saw, there's the latest story, which Tucker Carlson actually tried to keep, private, is that he and his family, I don't know if it was all of the kids, but it was certainly one of his sons and one of his daughters were at their country club, and a Latino man who they did not know confronted the daughter as she left the restroom and began to verbally accost her with profanity. She went back to the table, and her brother and father approached the man, and Tucker Carlson has now, publicly stated that it took everything within him not to beat the man with a chair because of what he said to his daughter, which I can't repeat here on the radio.
That's some real, the fact that he was able to contain himself is impressive.
Yeah, but what are we, what is the impetus for yelling and profaning the the daughter of the person
Right.
that holds the views that you don't like.
Oh,
Why
yeah.
why are we going
Yeah.
there?
Right. It's so below the belt. And again, I don't think that people can do that and not expect some sort of reaction. I think another example recently, well, first of all, that story is being pushed by Michael Levinetti. And as we know, he really cannot be trusted after the insane stories he pushed against Brett Kavanaugh. So I think everybody should be taking that tale with a giant grain of salt. I mean, one of the things he says in the story about Tucker Carlson at the country club is that Tucker was intoxicated, and apparently Tucker is a well-known, teetotaler. He does not drink. So
Right.
that's already something of a mistake in his story. But, another recent story was Kat Timpf, who's also from Fox News, was at a bar in Brooklyn and was harassed out of it. This was a few days ago. This happened, over this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody came to her defense. And this woman started screaming at her. And, one thing that Kat said was, name one thing I've said that you disagree with. Kat is not an extremist. She does not say crazy things. She's a very sort of moderate person. So what did these people have against her? And it really is just her place of employment. And it just shows how absolutely, insane this whole thing has become, that they can't point to anything that she said that would be controversial even.
The Kat Timpf story to me was disturbing because I always consider, so if you're a woman and you're out and she couldn't even make it back to her table to let the people she was there with know that she was going to leave. The woman literally screamed her out
Right.
of the bar,
Mm-hmm.
but she's a tiny woman. So
Yeah.
I always think of, the times that liberals have, jabbed their finger in my face, and I'm very tall. I'm 6 feet 2 inches tall. So when I have shoes on, I'm 6'4". And I've had short liberals, really short ones, reach up and jab their finger in my face violently, like poking, coming within, literally less than inches from my face. And when I've told them to get away from me or to back down, they look surprised, like, what do you mean I need to back away from you? What do you mean we can't keep debating this? I'm like, it's not a debate. Your hands are in my face. Back up.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, well, she doesn't want to talk to me anymore. I'm like, you have to get out of my personal space because I feel threatened. And then they raise their eyebrows. I'm not threatening you. I'm like, move your body away from my body. And then
Right.
they become
Absolutely.
much more calm. But it's as if in those moments they lose all ability to kind of judge their behavior as being, it's frightening to me. I find it frightening. Anytime anyone's yelling or losing control of themselves, if their emotions are running high, I always feel as if it's a situation that could become very volatile, and I want to exit it, or at least minimum get away from that person, because you don't know what they're going to do. What is that
right.
with
They
grown-ups?
seem erratic, and who knows?
Yeah, they're well educated. What is going on here?
Yeah, I also, the fact that nobody in the bar stood up for her is just so shocking to me. I mean, I cannot imagine my husband, my brother, hell, my 5-year-old son letting that kind of thing go on. I really can't imagine a situation where somebody's screaming at a woman and none of us do anything about it. Even if, no matter what side, no matter what the story is, somebody berating a woman in a bar is going to have should have somebody stand up for her. And the fact that nobody did is really pathetic.
It is pathetic. As I remember my son standing up for little girls on the playground when he was 5, and he's the same way now. I would not sit by in a restaurant and watch someone get screamed at by someone else without dialing 911 and getting up and going over and trying to break it up. I can't imagine, and especially someone who's really tiny, right? Like, I just don't. So do you see this? Because I personally, Carol, am of the belief that what we're seeing is only going to escalate because the police are not arresting these people, because bystanders aren't standing up, that we're going to see more of this behavior, especially after the Democrats take over the House and start to really spread these people out and encourage them in all areas of the country to kind of act up and act out against who they see as being on the wrong side.
Well, right. Well, look, I am fully anti-violence. I think that, speech is speech, and if somebody is screaming at me, as long as they don't put their hands on me, I think there's no need for a violent response. But again, these people have to imagine that everybody thinks like me, and that's just not the case. I think at some point somebody's going to get clocked, somebody's going to get hurt, somebody's going to get shot, and they're going to have to really rethink their yelling in people's faces and confronting them in restaurants and coming to their homes. I think they're setting up a very dangerous situation, and I think they really need to be aware of that. It's not going to, again, my thinking where if somebody's screaming at me and I won't hit them is not everybody's thinking, and they really need to recognize that.
So there was this, and I don't know if you saw this story. It was a woman whose son was killed in Iraq or Afghanistan, and she was wearing a hat and some clothing, like, and she's at a light in New York, I believe it was. And a guy comes up to her and starts screaming and yelling at her, and really he was taller than she was. He was obviously, kind of wearing a backpack. He was younger than she, it was just like not a mismatch. And so they stood there and he yelled and someone filmed it. And then within minutes, a couple of young guys, and they were not small, came up to him and they were, you like yelling at women. And they began to berate him. No physical altercation. They just yelled at him. And he ran. I mean, he fled, like he literally took to his heels and ran off to get away from them. And the look of fear in his eyes was so palpable. And I just wonder, is that what it's going to take?
Bullies need to be stood up to.
Yeah. to stand up to them.
Absolutely.
To see their true mettle. Like they're not really that violent. They're good at yelling unless you yell back.
Exactly. Right. They're not expecting any response. They think when the crowd is with them, they're just motivated by that. But if one person stands up to them, that might be enough.
I just encourage people to really consider how much more powerful we peaceful folks are, and not to be silent. I don't want to see brawling or people hitting each other, but I do believe that when one person is screaming at another person who was just walking or standing, in other words, they weren't provoked, there is no reason for other people to just stand by and watch that, to allow it to happen.
Right. Yeah, we should be better than that. We should be able to stand up to bullies and stand up on behalf of other people. I mean, it's what we teach our kids, right?
Yeah.
Yet the grown-ups are sort of falling down on that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. If nothing else, for the kids, because the kids are watching this and they're learning that it is okay if you get angry at someone to just go up to them and yell them down in the street, and that's not American.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for your article that you wrote over at the New York Post. I will share it in the live streams, and thank you for, I know it can't be easy being in New York, and especially the New York Post. I think you guys do a good job of covering both sides, which is so rare nowadays. You have opinion on both sides, then you have news on both sides, which is great. But it still can't be easy to kind of write about this, and so thank you for what you're doing there.
Thanks so much for having me, Stacey.
All right. Talk to you again soon, Karol. Karol Markowicz, columnist for the New York Post. Good to talk to you. I continue to be really, I guess this is a place where I don't understand what's going on, because it would never occur to me to see someone in public that I don't like, someone whose views I dislike, I should say, because I really don't have any personal feelings about these people. And I don't like their views. And so I go over to them and not say, hey, I've seen you on TV before and I think your opinions are garbage, but go over and just start yelling and putting my finger in their face and really, trying to intimidate them. It just doesn't occur to me. And maybe it's because my parents taught me to keep my hands and feet to myself and all of my body fluids. I remember my parents saying specifically, you don't yell until spit's coming out of your mouth on other people, because my dad was in law enforcement. He'd say, your bodily fluids hitting another person, that's battery. So don't do it. Don't yell, don't scream, no kicking, punching, poking, fighting, smacking, biting, grabbing, pushing, pulling, punching. What happened to that kind of teaching? What happened to it? Somebody's going to have to do a little something and get hit back is what's going to have to happen. But even then, look at Acosta. He has learned nothing. All right. When we get back, we're going to have your calls, and we're going to be talking about this remainder of topics for the show. You stay right there.
What does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
It was more than 20 years ago that Nike created a huge advertising campaign around 3 words: just do it. I have to admit, it was pure genius. With that in mind, we probably will never feel ready to go and share the Word of God, but God wants us to just do it. We may be afraid to make a mistake and turn someone off, or be embarrassed that we might not have all the right words, experiences, or scripture references. But God is much bigger than all our inadequacies and mistakes. He simply wants our hearts ready and willing to share with others what He has done for us.
Tony Dungy, author of the popular Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
Family is an institution set forth by God, one man and one woman for life, with the outflow being children produced by that union. It's obvious to all that there is an attack on the family in our country, and especially on fathers. Whether it's the cycle of sin that persists in our families or the pressure from our government to exclude men from being intimately involved, the strategic battle is on for the souls of men. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
Lonnie Poindexter.
Don't ever ask God for patience. Just say, oh, Lord, help me to be more patient. No, don't do that. Well, why, Lonnie? Why shouldn't I do that? He'll give it to you, but you're not going to like how you get it. Well, Lonnie, what do you mean? How do you get patience? Trials and tribulations, my brethren. That's how you get it.
Lion Chasers. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk.
Media Minute with Howard Kurtz.
New York Times columnist Jim Rutenberg says media outlets are debating whether to boycott the White House press briefings. This after the Trump team lifted the credentials of CNN correspondent Jim Acosta, who, of course, kept asking questions and wouldn't give up to the mic. To his credit, Rutenberg says Acosta is a somewhat polarizing figure, viewed by some of his press corps colleagues as a showboat. That's an understatement. But here's why it wouldn't work. Rutenberg says reporters could stage a group protest, but then they'd look like they were at war with the president. Or they could do nothing and effectively bow to his authority. In addition, they would look totally self-absorbed, giving up their chance to question the White House press secretary on the public's behalf. They would be pummeled by the president for being part of the opposition camp. And in any event, news organizations are not going to agree to this. There's too many outlets with too many different interests to sign on. So in any event, the show would go on. There's not going to be a boycott, but there aren't many press briefings these days anyway. With your Media Minute, Howie Kurtz, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
There is a very real likelihood that Roe v. Wade could be overturned in this Supreme Court, which would leave 25 million women, which is a third of women of reproductive age in this country, without access to reproductive rights. There are 15 cases right now that are just one step away from the Supreme Court. And in the last 7 years, there have been 400 laws passed in different states that directly restrict women's access. And I am deeply concerned about this from a public health perspective.
So, yeah, that was Planned Parenthood President Dr. Leanna Wen. Dr. Leanna Wen, she says there's a very real likelihood that the Supreme Court could overturn Roe v. Wade, and she points to the 15 cases. There's also really interesting developments in personhood. A couple of states have really gone pretty far to determine that they want to be on the record as being on the right side. Now, we've discussed this a few times on the show, and I just want to be perfectly clear that should the Supreme Court find cause to overturn Roe v. Wade, it would simply remand the issue of abortion and what is lawful in the arena of killing an unborn baby, the reasons for it, the time frame, the methods, that would all go back to individual interpretation by the states. And so you'd be able to say, as an American, I don't want to fund taxpayer-funded abortion, or I don't want to support abortion on demand past 24 weeks, or I don't want to support late-term abortion, or I don't want to support abortion, period. And you would see more conservative-leaning states eliminate abortion or eliminate access to abortion surrounding parameters that the people at the local level would set. You would also see some states like California, Illinois, New York, Connecticut. These are states that would have far-ranging, they would push it all the way up to the limit of actual infanticide, which they've already passed that. If you watch the Gosnell documentary, the movie that's out, you know that we've long since left behind the idea that abortion is somehow a medical procedure that doesn't harm anybody. The abortions that are going on in this country, in these private clinics, unsupervised, unregulated, not safety inspected. These are well beyond what Americans were told when they said safe, legal, and rare. Oh, we're so far beyond that. So if you think Gosnell was a one-off, then you're probably also one of those people who, when you go somewhere and you see a bug crawling on the wall, you're like, oh, there's just one. Where there's one, there's 1,000. That's the whole idea. So you don't want to see one bug crawling because you know there are so many more. One Gosnell case of unregulated infanticide and murder, then you know there are so many others, because 2/3 of the abortions in this country are done in private clinics. Planned Parenthood does 1/3 of the abortions in this country. Let that sink into you. Kermit Gosnell is not a one-off. The issue isn't that he's a one-off. The issue is that we don't have enough oversight to actually regulate butchers like him. So we have a bit of a problem. Houston, we have a problem. And that problem is that in the Christian community, we have so many people who are post-abortive and so many others who understand that the choice is, you have a teenage daughter who's pregnant, and you don't want people to know that this is the situation that she's in. And that's what propels people to go and send their, you got to have an abortion. And the natural assumption is that this is happening outside of the church. That this is happening, it's happening to people who are unchurched. They're not Christians. They're whatever it is that you need to think about to say, these are not the ones who are doing this. It's not Christians, but it is. It's Christians. It's Catholics. It's evangelicals. It's the people that are politically minded towards being against abortion, but they're actually having the abortions as well. They're participating. And so I've read a few things since I saw the original study that showed that Christian women comprise a huge percentage of the people who are having abortions. And the only thing that keeps coming to mind is that in a situation where a woman has to make a decision like that, and the woman is deciding based upon any number of factors, if your public persona is, we don't want to support abortion, but you have people in your family who've had abortions, or you yourself have had an abortion or something like that, it becomes an issue of, well, am I condemning myself? Am I being a hypocrite, saying other people can't do this when I've done it? And that's the binding power of sin like abortion. And I think it's part of the reason why we've been unable to see substantial pushback from the Republican Party on it. Because if it's tons of Christian women who are having abortions, it also means there are Republican women who are having abortions. There are families that vote Republican that their daughters have had abortions, or the sons' girlfriends have had abortions. And so this is it's just like anything else we're dealing with. It impacts so many different people. And the only thing we can do is continue to pray, continue to be as honest as we can about it, and to spend our time doing that hard work, which means we want to reach out. We want to support women. We want to support women who are coming to the realization that they made a mistake in having an abortion. We want to get them into the Bible studies that you can find at Pregnancy Resource Center so they can go through the process of healing. And we have to find a way to, while still saying, look, sex is for marriage, for those who make the decision to have sex outside of marriage and are getting pregnant, for them to know that they're still going to be safe in their community, especially their church community, instead of having an abortion, having the baby. And that's something that we're not doing right now. Clearly, we're not doing it because we have such a high rate of abortion in the church and in those communities. So we have tons of other news and information we're going to get to. I actually, a little bit more good news. If you want to call in and weigh in on the show today, also, I'm going to give you a little recap of my time yesterday. I wasn't here on the air. We had a re-air of a previous program, and that's because I was in Nashville, Tennessee, interviewing Art Laffer. Art Laffer, the creator of the Laffer Curve. He's a preeminent economist here in America, and he also helped craft the legislation that we have come to know as the tax reform package that was passed a year ago. And he's also helped to pass other bills from going all the way back to Ronald Reagan. He's a bipartisan type of a guy. So we'll talk about that in a second. The call lines are open at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. So here's the other good news that I have for you. It's Alabama voters passing an amendment to display the 10 Commandments at public schools. So you've got the November 6 elections. The residents of Alabama voted overwhelmingly to amend their state constitution to authorize the display of the 10 Commandments on public property, including public schools. Now, I've talked about this a little bit, and we are going to get into some discussion on gun control here, because that is on the Democrats' agenda for when they take over the House in January. They want to pass some meaningful gun sense, which just means law-abiding citizens give up your guns. Well, Alabama's Amendment 1 won with 71.66% of the vote. 28% of voters opposed the measure, so clearly a minority. It added language to the state constitution to authorize the display of the 10 Commandments on public property, including public schools. And the measure actually prohibited the state from using public funds to defend the constitutionality of the amendment. It adds statements about religious rights to the state constitution, including every person shall be at liberty to worship God according to the dictates of his or her own conscience. The civil and political rights, privileges, and capacities of no person shall be diminished or enlarged on account of his or her religious belief. Now, this is necessary because the freedom from fun people are always running around sending letters saying you can't pray, you can't have the 10 Commandments out. And what I don't understand is we've seen a marked decline in the level of safety in public schools, the level of adherence to, like, hey, a teacher told you to do something, I don't have to listen to teachers, I don't have to do what they say. We've seen all of these things go down since we removed the 10 Commandments and the Bible as an option for reading in school. We've never had a theocracy here in this country, but we have had the Bible as one of the primary learning tools, not just because it's the Word of God, but because we have a biblical-based society here in America, and knowing the stories of the Bible provides context for so many of the other things that we see going on in our everyday lives. Children who've never read the Bible, they don't actually even understand the 10 Commandments. They don't know what we're talking about. You won't kill. You don't lie, you don't covet. These are not things that they've been taught. They're not being taught at home. They're being taught to be good people, whatever that means. And also hope and change, whatever that means. So seeing Alabama put this back is an acknowledgement that we're waiting too late to get the Bible to people. You know where you can have free access to the Bible and you get a chaplain and everybody's all about you praying? In prison. That's after you've made all your mistakes. That's after you've really basically obliterated your opportunities, destroyed your life. You're in prison. Now, all of a sudden, it's okay to have a chaplain. It's okay to see the 10 Commandments. It's okay to have Bibles accessible to you. How about if we get the Bibles into the hands of the kids and the 10 Commandments in their eyeballs before they get on the elementary school to prison pipeline or the middle school to prison pipeline? And that's what I don't understand about this. And that brings me to this gun control thing. You've got Don Lemon and Chris Como talking about, how thoughts and prayers don't help with gun violence. And I'll explain a little bit more about the whole thoughts and prayers thing. I really have a problem with it. The whole characterization of thoughts and prayers, I have a problem with it. But the other thing is that we already know that the majority of the gun deaths in this country are due to suicide. And the remaining gun deaths are actually due to people shooting other people in the commission of a crime. And that's primarily concentrated in the Black community. So, what do we know? We need the Bible back into public schools. We need to teach these people not to do these things. They're not getting it at home. All right, let's go to Randy in Missouri. Randy, thank you so much for calling Stacy on the Right.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
This issue with abortion has been going on for a long time within the church. Just recently, in the last couple of weeks, there was a public demonstration of a bunch of clergy having a prayer vigil at an abortion clinic in Columbus, Ohio, where they equated abortion with some type of religious sacrament. And this type of behavior isn't anything new. There's an organization called the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice. They used to operate out of the Methodist building, illegally, by the way, because of tax-exempt status. They illegally functioned for 20-something years out of the Methodist building across the street from the Supreme Court. But all the liberal denominations are associated with it pretty much, and they promoted abortion in many different ways through literature. But this is something that people have been dealing with for a long time. Many pro-life counselors have been out at the abortion clinics for decades, and notice church buses pulling up, dropping off clergy, or clergy members in the cars dropping off customers at the abortion clinic. So
absolutely, we have to do something about it. Absolutely. Thank you so much for calling the show, Randy. Let's do one more quick call. Let's talk to Zoe in Texas. Zoe, thank you so much for calling the show.
Oh, my goodness. I'm so excited to be on your show. I'm just elated. I love listening to you and everything that you have to say. You know, I really wanted to put in my 2 cents on the abortion issue, particularly within the church. And, you know, as someone who has been faced with a pregnancy out of wedlock, it's very intimidating, really owning up to your own problems and, you know, taking personal responsibility. And I think that I'm kind of losing my train of thought because I'm so excited to be on your show.
We have about 30 seconds left, so before the top of the hour.
Well, you know, okay. Well, I just wanted to say that really being able to open my heart up to God and Scripture has only been able to help me polarize my beliefs in the church and definitely polarize me politically. And there's just nothing better than opening a blessing of child into your life. You know, it makes me so sad that women are afraid to take responsibility, whether, you know, when it's facing your family or the church. But it's just it's a judgment call.
It is.
Absolutely. That they need to take. They absolutely do.
Yeah, I agree, Zoe. And thank you so much for calling the show and for listening. We really appreciate you. I'm of the mindset that we're doing. A lot of people feel like they're doing their best, but there's some disconnect between what we're saying we believe about life and about forgiveness and about sin and about redemption and what we're actually practicing, because women are choosing to have abortions instead of carrying the baby to term and dealing with what they might see as a backlash or a loss of status within their community. And I'm speaking specifically of Christian women. Liberals are welcomed back into the fold when they have an abortion. It's not a problem. But clearly it's a secret that women are keeping in the church, and we've got to figure out a way to talk about it and to support families and to support these situations. All right, if you're leaving us now, God bless and have a nice evening. OneNewsNow.com. News information up next. Stay there.
Urban Family Talk.
There's a lot happening around us. That's why Christians need to stand strong on family values and morality. Hi, I'm Ray Rooney, editor of The Stand, a blog from the American Family Association. The Stand has timely, carefully written articles on relevant cultural issues that you can quickly forward to others. Visit afa.net/The Stand.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. At the center of Florida's vote recount storm is an election supervisor with a checkered past whose Democrat-dominated county has been the target of protests and accusations, including by President Trump, that something fraudulent is afoot. Lawyers for Republican Governor Rick Scott, who is in a razor-thin race with Democratic Senator Bill Nelson, have accused Broward Supervisor of Elections Brenda Snipes of outright fraud. Meanwhile, Snipes hinted today that she might not run for re-election. Amazon has revealed locations for its new headquarters, and Ginny Casolo reports there's an additional location also receiving jobs.
Long Island City, New York, Arlington, Virginia, and Nashville will all be receiving new Amazon facilities. The company says it will split its headquarters between the New York and Virginia locations. Each will receive 25,000 jobs. And it will place an operations hub in Nashville with an additional 5,000 jobs. Amazon competed for tax breaks and grants and had a list of requirements, including access to technology talent and an airport. Hiring for all locations will start next year. The average wage will be $150,000. Ginny Cosola, Fox News.
There are many community activists, though, that are concerned the move could negatively impact their community, including pricing people out of their neighborhoods. Meanwhile, Representative-elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has also expressed criticism about the deal, saying governments are offering tax breaks to Amazon when money is needed for things like infrastructure. An advocate for family values in Wisconsin thinks a university wasted money and needlessly subjected students to perversity by bringing an aging porn star to school to lecture students. AFN's Bob Kellogg has details.
Campus Reform reports the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse paid 59-year-old porn star Nina Hartley $5,000 to talk to students about liking and being comfortable in their sexuality. Julaine Appling of the Wisconsin Family Council believes the appearance should never have happened.
This is an egregious abuse, if you will, of a university system's ability to bring in special speakers. These kids do not need to know about pornography, and they don't need to meet a porn star.
Chancellor Joe Gow told the La Crosse Tribune the $5,000 was money well spent. Appling believes parents need to pay attention.
I wish parents who think that sending their kids to these kinds of schools in the UW system, that it was just fine and, nothing bad will happen. I wish they knew about these kinds of things to see that there's a huge risk involved with this.
The school's promotion of the event was very low-key, and just 70 students attended the 90-minute lecture. I'm Bob Kellogg.
In world news this hour, the UK and European Union have reached agreement on a Brexit deal. Fox's Simon Owen reports from London.
British Prime Minister Theresa May's office saying ministers have been called in for a meeting tomorrow to consider a proposed Brexit deal, the terms on which the UK would quit the European Union. It's more than 2 years since voters here opted to leave in a referendum. Any agreement would still need approval from EU lawmakers and a fractious UK Parliament, one member of May's government already calling the proposed deal unacceptable. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
Some Arabs in Gaza are celebrating, and Israelis in southern Israel are protesting an emerging ceasefire deal to end more than 24 hours of heavy fighting. Hamas supporters see the ceasefire as a win for having brought Israel to heel with a barrage of rocket fire. In a southern Israeli town, which has been pounded by rockets, dozens of protesters burnt tires, blocked traffic, and chanted disgrace at what they saw as the Israeli government's caving into terrorist violence. In final news this hour, the number of terror attacks around the world last year was 8,584. That sounds like a lot, but it was down 23% from 2016. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
Listen to Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
Did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible, it says the heart of the fool inclines to the left, just kept popping into my mind.
Stacy on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I don't think it's too much to ask for guns, Second Amendment right, and sense with it.
We have to stop pretending that the Second Amendment is the amendment above all that's sacrosanct.
Well, we will certainly pursue sensible gun control legislation as one of our priorities. You know, we're getting to the point now where we're having mass shootings every week. It's hardly news.
We're also seeing solidly red states like Utah, Idaho, and Nebraska vote in favor of Medicaid expansion, which indicates that people want more health care, not less. And I strongly believe as a physician that health care has to be a fundamental human right and that women's health care is health care.
Illegal immigrant was released from Middlesex County there and came right here to the Midwest, right here in southwest Missouri, and killed 3 people. And that's just another classic case where we could have saved 3 lives, and we have 3 innocent people that are no longer here because sanctuary cities and sanctuary counties.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. We are going to dig into this. Let's dig into some chitter-chatter about a number of different things, specifically how an ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement detainer, was ignored, and that individual was released. Instead of being released to ICE, they were released out into the, populace, where they traveled to the state of Missouri and killed 3 people. Not one person, not 2 people, but 3 people were killed by this individual. I mean, it's kind of unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now, if you tried to call into the show and you want to get in to discuss any of these things, call lines are open, 866-963-2037. Call in and join us at 866-963-2037. We're also going to talk about the ridiculousness of the idea that we can have sensible gun control. We already have a whole range of laws to control guns, and they don't work. The more gun control we have, the more violence we have. In states that don't have as many laws about gun control, you don't see as much violence. That's because criminals know what's up. They know when the populace that they're living among is armed, and they know what to do. They do the break-ins and all that stuff when no one's home. And then we're also going to have a kind of discussion, actually 2 different audio bits on gun control. And we're going to be talking about, first of all, the agenda of the Democrats, which I launched into just a little smidge, and I want to get the remainder of that done. And I'm going to cover this completely. What I've been reading and seeing is that the Democrats have already begun to kind of flesh out where they want to take their investigatory powers. And in order to kind of see what they're going to do now, you have to see what they did before. And it's instructive to look back at what they were doing when they were in charge back in 2006. Now, this was when they were last in charge of the House of Representatives. And what they wanted to do was have kind of an aggressive tone and influence, but they had to be careful about it because they couldn't get too crazy because they had to reelect Barack Obama. In 2006, the president was going to be coming up for election in 2008. So they had a couple of years to lay the groundwork for that. So they wanted to be as radical as they could, but they had to downplay the radicalism publicly. And that's the big difference here. And I want to highlight, in 2006, they were just as radical and crazy then, but they had to be, on the secret about it. They had to keep it hidden, keep it safe, keep it secret. Now it's all out in the open. They've given the parts of America's populace that are hungry for that kind of action, they've given them a taste. Now they're going to make good on the little dribs and drops that they've given out so far. They're going to go full bore. So you've got that whole situation. Now, we've seen a lot of aggression. We've seen the severity of it on the left. We've seen that the media no longer tries to act as if there's nothing wrong. The media, in fact, goes to great lengths to say things like, well, no, that's not a mob. They want to change the definition of words, but they don't castigate the behavior. At first, they said Maxine Waters maybe wasn't right when she said run them out of public spaces. But then when they saw it in action, they liked it. They saw Sarah Huckabee Sanders get thrown out of the Little Red Hen restaurant, and so they liked it. Now, I don't know. Have we even checked to see if the Little Red Hen is still in business? She had closed the restaurant down she'd actually closed that restaurant down. And for a couple of weeks after the story broke, because the people in her town were so divided, and she stepped down as one of the leaders of her town. But I don't know if the restaurant's back open again or not, and I'll have to definitely check on that. Maybe on the next break I'll get a chance to look it up and see if they've reopened. Let's go back to the phones. We have Tony in Kansas. Thank you so much for calling the show today.
Oh, you're welcome. And, I've spent the last 17 years studying criminal justice in higher education. I'm a scholar. And in the past 5 years, I focused mostly on homeland security, counterterrorism, and such. And I've been watching this stuff just kind of to myself and watching what's happening in our country with leaders like Maxine Waters and Eric Holder and Nancy Pelosi, encouraging violence against people for whatever their political beliefs are. And I can't help but wonder why nobody's considering this domestic terrorism when people actually follow through with it. I cannot wear a Trump hat out in public because I'm afraid of getting attacked. People are getting attacked all over the country for being Republicans. And people are just dancing around it. And it is, by definition, domestic terrorism.
It is. So, first of all, thank you for the work that you've done in that arena. And you are correct when you say that it's domestic terrorism. I think my problem, Tony, is that let's put the shoe on the other foot. I know it's a hypothetical, but just for this particular instance, can you imagine any Republican calling for violence the way Maxine Waters and others in the Democratic leadership have done, and then conservative Americans, Trump hat wearing Americans going out and being violent in the ways that we've seen the Democrats do, and for them to not be arrested, for them to be allowed to vandalize property and terrorize people in their homes and no one to get arrested, and for there to just be this kind of overall silence in the media about it?
Oh, no, absolutely not. We're encountering a rebellion here, and it's against our democracy. And see, when we see it in other countries, we see it on the news, and we send our troops out to fight against it. But when it's here, we aren't doing anything about it. We're just sitting here sweeping it under the rug, acting like it's not. We're silently suffering. And I'm astonished at what happened to Tucker Carlson's wife. How is that even possible in this country? And how are our political leaders encouraging it?
I just, Tony, it makes me feel sad because I see every time they get away with it, I feel like they're emboldened, and it sets them up for a really hard fall because at some point they're going to be not in Maryland, a gun control state, not in Washington, D.C., a gun control district. They're going to be somewhere where the person that they attack is armed, and they are credibly afraid of a mob of people attacking them, and they're going to defend themselves. And then what will happen? I don't want to see that. I don't want to see Americans defending themselves against other Americans over political speech. It's not worth it.
How is it justified? What they're doing is they're building it up in these states that are very liberal states, and they're building up these these large groups of people that justify it. And I heard about Berkeley. I'm just blown away by all of this. How our Republican leaders aren't stepping in and saying enough is enough.
No, they're not. And I don't know what the answer is, because in my mind we would have seen people getting arrested, and the arrest would be the deterrent, the prosecutions, but we haven't seen that.
Exactly. Or charge some of these people with domestic terrorism. That's a deterrent.
It is.
In itself. Call it what it is.
Yeah, the first person who gets convicted on a domestic terrorism count for so-called protesting, but they're actually doing, the things we've seen, that would completely reorient the way these people behaved, because they're only going by what they know the rules allow.
Yeah, Antifa's out of control. They're just out of control.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Tony. Thanks for calling the show. Yeah, you're right. I think you are absolutely right. Thanks for calling into the show today. Have a great afternoon. I'm interested in seeing people prosecuted, not because I think I want people to get in trouble. I'm interested in seeing them getting prosecuted because I want to see justice. And I'm fine with protest. I was fine when all the protests were going on here in St. Louis. I wasn't fine when they decided to shut down the highways. I was fine when they were, standing outside of businesses. I was not fine when they were laying down in the Galleria Mall and making you walk over them to shop. So you see what I'm saying here? When you're protesting and you've got your permit and you're doing whatever you're doing, look, I may not like what you're protesting about. I may not agree with you, but I don't care that you're protesting. You have every right to do that. But when you're blocking the highway so I can't go pick up my kids or an ambulance can't get someone who's been injured to the hospital, now you're not protesting anymore. As Tony described, there's a difference between legitimate protesting, which is constitutionally protected, and these other things. Vandalizing other people's property, setting police cars on fire, beating people down for wearing a Trump hat, pouring drinks on people who are wearing Trump hats, running people out of restaurants where they've paid. No, it's not okay. So I told you about the Little Red Hen. I was saying I wondered what had happened since Sarah Huckabee Sanders was kind of run out of there. What had they done? Well, they actually have had the entire town suffer. The tourism in the entire town has suffered because of what happened at the Little Red Hen. And this was an article from the AP from just over a month ago saying that the Roanoke Times has reported Regional Tourism Board pulling together emergency funds to boost their digital marketing campaign with money that they normally save because they're in desperate need of positive coverage after the news media descended on Lexington, basically saying, what happened at the Red Hen. I noticed 70% of the reviews for the Red Hen are positive on Yelp. And so it's clear that the restaurant has reopened. But this is the chance that you take when you decide to make politics more important than running your business. There's no way that it's okay to run people out of public spaces over politics. I mean, we didn't see that kind of behavior back in Nazi Germany, where they were shipping human beings off for experimentation and mass murder, and nobody ran anybody out of a restaurant. That's when people should have been running each other out of restaurants. That's when people should have been openly fighting over the agenda that the Nazis were putting forward. Now we have simple left-right politics, and the people on the left are demonizing people on the right. All right, I want to quickly cover Maryland has sued to block Whitaker from serving as Attorney General. The legal challenge argues that the appointment was unconstitutional. The only thing unconstitutional about Whitaker is that he's not going to, that according to their mind, Democrats don't see Whitaker recusing himself. They don't want any oversight over the Mueller investigation. Democrats don't want oversight over Mueller because Mueller is not operating within the bounds of what he was mandated to do. He's supposed to be investigating Russian collusion, not the president's finances, not his business dealings, just Russian collusion. Now, if there's Russian collusion in any of those other items I just named, then sure, investigate those. But if there is no evidence of Russian collusion in any of those items, then why would Mueller be investigating them? That is why they don't want oversight. And I think it's pathetic. You know what I'm so sick of is how Democrats are only interested in oversight when they're doing it. They're only interested in investigations when they're doing it. When someone they don't like is in power, they want to remove them, even though President Trump was elected by the people of the United States. Was it what the Democrats wanted? Of course not. Was Barack Obama what we wanted? Of course not. But anyway, so you've got that, and I want to make sure that you saw that is a story that Maryland moving to block Whitaker, like Maryland is the only state in the country that has anything to do with who our Attorney General is. Unbelievable. All right, when we get back, we're going to be talking about gun control and how we don't need any of it. We'll take your calls, and we'll have more here on Stacey on the Right, 866-963-2037.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You know, our tours each year fill up quickly. And so I'm letting you know now, don't tell anybody else now, that the 2019 Spiritual Heritage Tours are planned for June and for September. So if you want to go this year, that is 2019, you need to let us know as soon as you can. Visit the website spiritualheritagetours.com. spiritualheritagetours.com. Again, those are two separate trips, one to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, and the other one to Washington, D.C. and George Washington's Mount Vernon. Stephen McDowell, who's the president and founder of the Providence Foundation, is our historian, and he'll be on both trips telling us the behind the scenes and the stories of who, what, when, and why.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
The term anti-Semitism has been loosely thrown around for years and used recently to label the president, even though he has Jewish people in his extended family. It's about time to give specificity to a real problem that has often been redefined and demeaned by misuse. At the core of anti-Semitic thought is that Jews are the source of many social problems, and thus Jews are guilty of everything. This is what's so crazy about this false belief. Supposedly, Jews are the reasons for problems in commerce in our culture. Arab countries have 40 times the population of Israel and occupy land area that is 500 times greater. Yet it is Israel that is the problem and must be pushed into the sea. And the United Nations routinely passes resolutions condemning Israel while ignoring significant human rights abuses in other countries. The murderer who rushed into the Pittsburgh synagogue and killed 11 Jews certainly believed that Jews were the problem and needed to be killed. If you read some of his Gab posts, you will be horrified by his anti-Semitic words and images. Dennis Prager reminds us that Jews understand this hatred. On Passover, they read from a Jewish prayer book these words, "In every generation they arise to annihilate us." Notice it doesn't say persecute us or even enslave us. Anti-Semites want to kill all Jews and eliminate them from the planet. This level of hatred isn't just irrational, it's demonic. It's about the only explanation you can have for people possessed by a level of hatred that makes no sense. Jews number 18 million in a world population of 7.5 billion. Israel occupies a landmass no bigger than New Jersey, yet Jews are the problem and Israel is the problem. This only makes sense when viewed through the lens of spiritual warfare. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
You know, we're told that by the NRA and others that the problem is mental health or whatever. But you look at Western Europe, you look at Japan, and they have 50 gun deaths, 120 gun deaths, 150 gun deaths. We have 33,000 a year. It's a slander on the American people to say that our people are 10,000 times as mentally ill as people in Western Europe or Japan. The problem is the unfettered use of assault rifle, of military-style weapons, the lack of appropriate background checks, and we will have to deal with this.
Yeah. Okay. So that's Representative Nadler, and he says, "Look at Europe." Well, look at them. Look at their landmass. Look at their population. The population of Europe as of 2018, according to the interwebs, is 742 million. But what's that got to do with the price of tea in China? Like, why is it that Democrats love to compare us to Europe or Australia or, what? So what? That's like me going to my husband tonight and saying, our neighbors across the street just put in a new kitchen. And he'd say, "Oh, that's nice." And then I'd say, "So we need a new kitchen." And he'd say, "Wait a minute. That's not how this thing works." And so what? So Europe is doing what now? Europe doesn't have a single constitution. Europe is not one nation. It's a bunch of different little countries with their own particular backgrounds. They're related loosely through their, feudal system when they had monarchies and whatnot. And certain parts of their nations, the leadership basically would intermarry and, strengthen their lines and all of that stuff. But as of right now, they're just a bunch of modern countries who wish they could operate like the United States of America, but they can't. They'll never be the United States of Europe. They'll never have the same kind of cohesive unit that we have because we are one people group. We bring people from other countries to intermingle with our native-born Americans, And everyone who comes here becomes an American. Not so if you move to France or England, et cetera, et cetera. It's not the same thing. And it doesn't even matter even if it was somewhat loosely arranged in the same manner that ours is, because we've had the right to bear arms since our inception, because that is how we threw them off of us. Remember, we used to be owned by Great Britain, and we showed them the door at the end of a musket. It wasn't like we said, we'll kindly ask you to leave, and they said, tally-ho, off you go. No, it wasn't that at all. It was, hey, we don't like paying your tax, and now we want to be our own thing. And they were like, you're not leaving. And we were like, no, you're right. We're not leaving. You are. You're going to get off of our American soil, and we're going to drive you off of it with these muskets, and we'll walk barefoot in the snow to do it. And oh, by the way, this is America. You understand what I'm saying. So this guy, Representative Nadler, who's saying we're certainly pursuing sensible gun control, he mentioned also Japan has, very few shootings. Well, they have about half the population that we have, and they have an extraordinarily high suicide rate. They don't kill each other. They kill themselves. No offense. Y'all know I love the Japanese. This isn't about, downgrading them. It's just about talking facts about what happens in their country. They have a different culture. Their culture is actually, in a lot of ways superior to ours because they're so cooperative with each other. When they have a natural disaster, they don't loot. They don't beat each other up. They don't fight each other. They just get in orderly lines and wait for their opportunity to get whatever is being handed out. They're just different. Now, I want to give some clarity to his comments. First of all, we don't have a mass shooting every week, so he should zip that up. That's a lie. The CDC also states that in 2015, 44,193 people died from suicide. 44,000 people. Now, remember, the only other numbers that compare to those are the numbers of people who die from heart disease and obviously the number of people who are dying from the opioid epidemic, which are 55,000 for the last 3 years in a row. These are real crises that we should be handling, but you never hear the Democrats talk about it because they don't care about rural Americans who are dying from opioid overdoses. They don't care about suburban Americans who are dying from them. They care about controlling the guns because that's what stands in between them and total domination. So you had 12,979 people dying from firearms, and this is according to the National Vital Statistics Report, Volume 66, November 6, November 27th, 2017. That was when it was accessed. So you have 44,193 people killing themselves in America in 2015, and roughly 13,000 people utilizing a firearm was utilized in their death. 13,000 in a country of over 300 million. But this is their primary focus, controlling the guns. Now, how could we lower that number? If we're talking about the 12,979 people and the huge bulk of that group were black, killed by other black people. How can we reduce that number? Well, let's take one metric, which is the number of students who are black who are going to school to study engineering. And first of all, why engineering? Because engineering is a career field that consistently over the decades, it has never gone down. It's only gone up. The median income for a graduate with a degree in any of the 16 engineering disciplines is always 10 to 15,000 than the median income for a family of four in this country. So they usually come out of college with a 4.5 to 5 year engineering degree, and they earn, starting out, well over $60,000 a year. Notice I said the median, not the average, the median. So that means half of the people earn below that, half earn above that. So back in 2003, 6.2% of all of the engineering students in this country who were attending colleges in this country for engineering were black, 6.2%. Blacks are 13% of the overall U.S. population, but only 6.2% of the engineering graduates, engineering students were black. That was in 2003. So you're probably thinking, oh, well, after the first black president, and after so much talk about race, and after so much of everything going on with the Democrats and their striving for utopianism, that number surely has improved. Well, let's go to the statistics. In 2013, 10 years later, after the advent of President Barack Obama, you have the latest data available showing that 5% of all of the engineering students currently in college right now are black. 5%. So actually fewer. So you have the first black president, the first black first lady, the first black family, the first black attorney general, all of these firsts. And what do you get for it? The percentage of blacks studying engineering has dropped. Now, how do you change the circumstances of an impoverished group of individuals who more likely than not will end up in the prison pipeline? Meaning they can't do math and English, math and reading at grade level in the 4th grade. And by the 8th grade, they're dropping out, getting jumped into gangs, going to prison. They're getting arrested. They're getting introduced to the prison system. This group of people I'm talking about are the inner city, the impoverished blacks in America. And how do you change their circumstances? Well, obviously, the first thing is if you come to know the Lord Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you will radically adjust your trajectory. But how do legislators and public policy analysts impact that group of people? Well, you would have to get more of them reading and doing math at grade level in the 4th grade, which means you have to go back to their preschool the year before they go to kindergarten to make sure that they know 20 sight words, can count to 30, and can visualize numbers from 1 to 10. They also have to be able to sit still for, 40, 50 minutes at a time and follow a multi-part instruction. Once you've got a child at 3.5, 4 years old, 4.5 years old who's able to do those things, then they're ready to enter public school at the kindergarten level. And then from there, because they're entering at the same level as everyone else, you don't have the behavioral issues when children realize everyone in the class can do something they can't do. They start acting out, having behavioral problems, and sent out of the classroom and told that your kid has ADHD, they can't sit still. And then they're being offered Ritalin and all this other stuff and being classified as having some kind of learning deficiency. Look, I'm telling you, this is what happens to black kids in America, kids living in poverty in America, some Hispanic kids. It happens to kids who they come to school unprepared. And they continue to be unprepared, and the gap between what they and their classmates know continues to widen until they get to 4th grade, and that is when the parents start getting these notifications about their kid not being on grade level. They start yelling at the kid, you're not paying attention in school, but the kid was never ready for school. And by 8th grade, they've fallen so far behind, and now they know it. Now they know they can't read. They know they can't do math. They know that they are really far behind. And why go to a building where every day you learn just how much you don't know? Why not just stay home and get into something else? Stay at someone else's house during the day and skip school and figure out something else to do. Hey, the guy on the corner says I can make a lot of money every day, $120 a day. If I just pass these little white packets out and give him the money, he gives me a huge cut. I can have some money to spend during the day. I can take care of myself. I can make sure I have food to eat at night. And that is what is happening. And so instead of Nadler and all of these other gun rights people or gun grabbing people running around talking about how, what we need to do is we need some gun control. What we need is for kids to be prepared to go to school. We need to restore families. We need to incentivize families. Intact families are what brings the children, when you see them showing up to school and they already know where a comma goes in a sentence, that's a kid who has a mom and dad at home. And a lot of people, you may be listening to this and you're like, well, my single mom raised me and I went to college. And so I'm sick and tired of hearing you say we need intact families. You know what? God bless you and good for you. And congratulations on having an amazing mom who was able to pull you out of a statistical nightmare and create success for you. I bet you anything she spent a lot of her time when you were sleeping praying over you and praying for these kinds of results. It can be done, obviously. But it is not the optimal situation, nor is it what God called us to. God called us into a triune bond, male and female, bonded together for life with God so that he could ordain and bless our union with children, families that are strong and rooted in his word, that are producing successful children who then go out and reach their mark for Christ. And so this isn't about making anybody feel bad. It's about telling the truth that God's word has. If you have a problem with it, take it up with him. I think it's wonderful that you were successful and that your mom was able to do it on your own. And good for you, but that is not the optimal situation. And everyone who's telling you that it is lying. And so instead of talking about controlling the guns, how about controlling these families? How about controlling the environment where these children are being brought up? They're human beings. A couple weeks ago, I was talking about how people don't think I have feelings because I'm forceful on the radio and because I'm really tall and I'm black. And obviously, I do have feelings. People treat statistical anomalies that way as well. These black kids in the inner cities, they don't care about this. They don't care about that. Yes, they do. Poor kids in rural areas don't care about this. Yes, they do. They're people and they care and they have feelings. Any human being, especially those who are trapped in poverty and they understand and they know my situation is not only not the best, it is clear that I am disadvantaged. And they want the same things that other kids want who are living in the suburbs, whose parents are divorced or what have you, because it's not like the suburbs are free from any kind of ill. All kids want the two parents. And that is why we have to stop talking about controlling guns and start talking about controlling our own behavior and controlling family situations. Creating an environment in which the intact family is not only the ideal or something that we say is a result of white privilege. Having a husband and a wife raising kids is not a white thing. It is a privilege to partner with God in that good work, but it is the work that we do. It is the thing that propels families to success. Having a husband and a wife together, raising a family, sets your family outside of the opportunity to fall into these negative statistics. Of course, there are going to be families that have a mom and a dad that, perform poorly, but it's not the norm. It's not the norm. God's word is true all the time. It's true regardless of how you beat the statistics. It's true regardless of how it makes you feel. It's true, it's true, it's true. It's not my thing. I didn't write it. I'm not responsible for it. I'm just telling you what the truth is. And so for every minute we spend talking about these gun control statistics, there are families out there who could really benefit from the knowledge that, maybe you're shacking up, you're part-time. Maybe the two of you should sit down and think, you know what? In 10 years, where do we want to be? Let's get married and let's give this thing a try. We go to church sometimes. Let's start going every Sunday and just see what happens. Let's just try this. Well, now you're acting white. So be it. Call it whatever you want. Call it acting white. Call it acting like a Martian. Call it acting rich. Call it acting like somebody who has 2 brain cells that work. Call it whatever you want, but try it because the formula for success is out there. It's not a secret. It's available. Anyone can access it. Anyone can do it. It's a simple decision that a person has to make that I don't want my kids to be statistics. I don't want my kids falling through the cracks, not being able to read and do math in the 4th grade. So I'm going to marry their dad and I'm going to get my family on the trajectory for success that is so obviously laid out before me. All I have to do is make a decision. I'm going to get on that path. This is the thing that Nadler and Cuomo and Don Lemon and all these other people, just check it out. Cuomo, he's married. They have 3 or 4 kids. His wife's been on CNN before. He doesn't live like he tells everybody else they should live. Same thing with most of these talking heads on TV. Now, obviously, Don Lemon, he's not a traditionalist, but so many of the rest of them are. Not only are they traditionalists in their marriage and they don't get divorced, they marry their college sweetheart or their high school sweetheart. They stay married. They have all their kids together. The kids go to private school. They live in these closed off enclaves. If they're not gated, they're so expensive. You can't get in there. You cannot afford to live there. And they can afford to live there because they're in television. They're making $500,000 a year or more. They can afford to live in these really exclusive suburbs. And so they're not only untouched by the regular crime that most Americans have to deal with if they live in certain inner city areas, but they also don't have to worry about illegal immigrants being in their neighborhood unless the illegal immigrants are there to work for them under the table. So they've insulated themselves from the effects of their own policies, but they're advocating for you to live any way you want to, not the way they live, because they don't care if you're successful. That's the big deal here. That's what they're not talking about. All right, when we get back, we're going to listen to Don Lemon and Cuomo talk about guns. Stay there. This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. A Republican from Oklahoma has a plan to fund completion of the wall at our southern border. Senator Jim Inhofe's solution is simple. reduce illegal immigrants' access to federal welfare, and use those savings to fund the wall. Here are the specifics. The WALL Act would require each person seeking to collect the child tax credit to have a work-authorized Social Security number instead of just the child. It would also require that E-Verify be used to prove citizenship. The minimum fine levied against illegal border crossers would be increased. With open borders Democrats poised to take over the House in January, Inhofe's plan should be implemented during the lame duck session. It's no secret that America is a great place to live. Congress should act quickly to end the attraction of taxpayer-funded easy living for illegal immigrants. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
Hi, this is Steve Tiber of 8 Days of Hope. Since Hurricane Michael struck Florida, 8 Days of Hope responded very quickly. We sent volunteers, leaders, and equipment to aid those who lost everything to no fault of their own. Ministry is happening every single day through an 8 Days of Hope volunteer. If you'd like to be a part of 8 Days of Hope down in Panama City Beach, go to 8daysofhope.com. It's an active disaster site, so you need to be 18 years of age, but we provide the food and lodging. We have all the tools and equipment. All you have to do is have a willing heart. Hurricane Michael was the worst hurricane since Hurricane Andrew and the strongest hurricane ever to hit the panhandle of the beautiful state of Florida. 8 Days of Hope will be in Panama City Beach through November 24th. That's the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Tarping roofs, doing chainsaw work. Today, there's hundreds of volunteers from all over the country loving and serving people in need. Join the ranks of believers from around the country. Go to 8daysofhope.com, 8daysofhope.com.
Pyro to the People with Todd Pyro.
We're about 2 years into President Trump's time in office. How do you think he's doing?
He's doing the best job of any president since Reagan.
He's rude, he's crude, he's bigoted, he's racist, he's ignorant, and he's proud of it.
He's one of the best presidents, maybe the best president.
He's trying to secure and keep us safe with the borders.
There are no words to express my disappointment and disgust. I can't even pick up the paper without wanting to vomit.
He is dedicated and has his heart in the right place regarding America.
I think he's doing an awesome job. However, I think he could be a little kinder and sweeter to people.
He's been very divisive. He's trying to fearmonger, nationalism, fear of white males losing status.
All I can say is that my 401k is up 50% since he's been in office.
With Pyro to the People, I'm Todd Pyro.
Welcome back to Stacey on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I've been told the Lord helps those who help themselves. And the last couple of times we've had these shootings, and I said thoughts and prayers. It's why do we do thoughts and prayers? We should be doing
anything.
We
should be doing anything
to stop this.
Is
right?
what you do.
But then you get criticism. Like you said, we can't even have a conversation because people will say, "Oh, what are you, anti-religion, anti-God?" It's the dumbest argument. That's not what we're saying. We're saying before you get to those thoughts and prayers, where you don't have to pray for the people who sadly lost their loved ones or are suffering from this or injured or what have you, maybe you should be doing something to prevent it instead of just afterwards going, oh, our thoughts and prayers, okay.
See how pat he is? That's Don Lemon talking to Cuomo over on CNN about, thoughts and prayers. Yeah, when you say it like that, it sounds kind of silly, but I have a post on Facebook if you want to kind of be able to share that. We don't send thoughts to people. We think about people. When we pray for people, we don't pray to them. We don't send prayers to them. We pray to God in Jesus' name, and then we can tell people, I prayed for you, but you don't pray to people, and you don't send prayers to them, and you don't send them your thoughts. Because if you have a way of sending thoughts other than email, please tell me how you're doing that, because that's something interesting that I'd be interested in hearing. I just, you can tell me about how you're sending your thoughts in other ways besides writing them on a sheet of paper and then send them off or putting them in an email. If you're thinking about the victims of a tragedy, that's nice, but that's doing nothing. Thinking about them and then praying to them, well, you see where that gets you. You pray to God about different people. That's so. I'm a stickler on that. I'm so sick of hearing it. It just opens it up for this kind of misinterpretation that we're hearing from these two dunderheads. He also said, God helps those who help themselves. Now, people would swear that that is something that is in the Bible. It is not in the Bible. It is usually attributed to Ben Franklin, who was quoted in Poor Richard's Almanac in 1757, but that's not even correct. The fact is, God helps those who help themselves originated from Algernon Sidney in 1698 in an article titled Discourses Concerning Government. It is not even biblical. It's not even slightly biblical. God helps those who help themselves. No, God helps the helpless. Isaiah 25:4 says, for you have been a defense for the helpless, a defense for the needy in his distress, a refuge from the storm, a shade from the heat. Romans 5:6 says, for while we were still helpless, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. It doesn't say God helped those who were ungodly put themselves on the cross so they could die for themselves. God helps those who help themselves. No. So when you hear somebody say that, you know, you don't have to rebuke them in the name of Jesus, but you can definitely correct them. That is Algernon Sidney back in 1698 who said that. It's not in the Bible. And that's why Google is our friend, DuckDuckGo, Bing, whatever your search engine of choice is. That's why it's our friend. It's easy to find out. Is this in the Bible? Before you had to actually skim it or speak to a scholar or look in another book that talks about what's in the Bible. Now you can just type it in your phone and say, is this in the Bible? In terms of salvation, we're all utterly helpless. We are all sin-filled individuals in need of a Savior. We cannot help ourselves other than to say we choose to believe in Jesus Christ. We choose to accept him and ask him to forgive us of our sins. That is the only help in ourselves we can do. And even that simple, tiny act is predicated upon the work that Jesus Christ did on the cross. So you don't get credit for it. Now, there is a way that this whole God helps those who help themselves is in theory, like, so you can say that God does want us to be active and to work. And that is in the execution of our faith. And so we have to believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those that diligently seek him. That's scriptural. And we have to act. In other words, let's say you're looking for work, or you need a job. You can pray, Father, I need work, I need a job. This is what I'm hoping to get. Help, Father, please send me an opportunity. But you still have to go through the work, the rigor of creating a resume for yourself or a CV. You have to go through the work of making sure that you're ready to do an interview by being dressed appropriately, by being able to, perform all the functions that are necessary in an interview. So in that way, yes, you must help yourself because you have to be prepared. But the idea that, well, God helps those who help themselves. If we just need to pass some good gun control legislation and then God would help us. No, sir. That's not what this is about. It is not it's not even close to that, which is why we had to cover this today on the show. There was no way I could let the program go by without addressing this crazy talk. Crazy talk. And this is just, so I was in the airport yesterday. I told you guys, so remember on Friday, or it was either Thursday or Friday, bear with me, I don't remember which day it was that I interviewed Mr. Who did I interview? It was Stephen Moore, the co-author of Trumponomics. So I had him on the program, and I was telling him how I was going to interview Art Laffer on Monday. And so that's what I did. I got up a little early yesterday and flew to Nashville, and I went to Art Laffer's office. Now, he's an economist. He's the creator of the Laffer curve, and he has been working in economics and economic policy at the national level, specifically helping presidents to craft good policy. And teaching at the most highest levels of economics at the university level since the Reagan years. So he has all these notes around his office from bipartisan Al Gore, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Ronald Reagan. And he has done some amazing work. I mean, it's like meeting a bit of a legend. That's what it was like for me yesterday. And so I got to interview him about economic policy, taxation, all of those things. And we're going to have some of that content for you here on the program. But suffice it to say, it was an amazing thing for me to get to sit and talk to him. I could have talked to him for hours, or rather, I could have asked him questions and sat and listened. But while I was in the airport in Nashville, I noticed that they had the CNN blaring up loud. It's not like they have it at a place where you can just sit and if you want to listen to it, you can hear it. But if you want to ignore it, you can. It's up so loud, you have to leave the general area and get to the very edges of the seating spaces to not have to hear it blaring in your ear. And I still don't understand why we allow that as taxpayers because taxpayers pay for airports. Why CNN has to be the garbage that's piped in. That's why their ratings are what they are. It's not that so many Americans watch CNN. It's that they are piped into these huge spaces with large amounts of people flowing through, and they get to count their ratings. All the airports in this country have this agreement with CNN, save like one or two little tiny airports. Everybody's got this agreement to blare CNN. So it was annoying. And then there was a coffee shop I went to sit down and work with my laptop, and they were blaring some CD by Rihanna. And I'm gonna go ahead and say it, and y'all are, if you have to laugh, God bless you, and I'm glad I'm able to help. But I had never listened to an entire Rihanna CD. Like, I've only listened to whatever the most popular songs of hers are that they blare in the shopping places, like the mall and stuff. I've heard those songs, or if it's a song that's been incorporated into some kind of commercial, then I've heard that. But I've not ever just sat down and said, oh, let me listen to a Rihanna CD. So I sat there working in the little coffee shop at the airport, and that music was boring into my brain. I'm sure that's part of the reason why I was so tired when I got home last night, besides the fact that I spent the whole day on my feet walking, and there really wasn't any downtime, because doing those same day turnarounds is exhausting. But suffice it to say, it was a pleasure to interview him, and I'm hoping that when we have that interview available to share here on the program, it's going to be really great content for you to listen to. It was a pleasure for me to get to interview him, and perhaps we could have him on the show live. I don't know. I definitely would consider that to be something really, really impactful for us to have that content here. So I was also I'm going to cover this, what the Democrats were up to, and we know. So let's kind of reset this really quickly here. We have about 5 minutes left here in this segment. What I'm really concerned with the House of Representatives going back to the Democrats is that, so some people are thinking, well, the Democrats won the House back and their agenda is going to be towards ushering in a 2020 presidential win for the Democrats, and also defunding the president's agenda. When they were in charge back in 2006, when they took power, they set the president up to have his agenda paid for, which is what the Republicans should be doing in the lame duck session. They should be funding the president's agenda for the next 2 years. Now, will they? I don't know what they're going to do, because they're not very good at the lame duck. It shouldn't be a lame duck, by the way. It should be an active duck, a working duck. The lame duck session. So also, what the Democrats are hoping you'll understand and begin to accept is that the way that they're treating Tucker Carlson and his family, that's the new norm. That's what you have to accept. That's what you have to put up with. Remember back in 2006, names you haven't heard in a while, SEIU, AFCME, they had union foot soldiers smashing windows, patrolling polling places, doing voter fraud and intimidation. Now, in 2018, you've got Tom Perez, and all of those activities are now institutionalized and well accepted as a means by which they can win. Look at Arizona, which the Democrats have now stolen that election with Kristen Sinema being announced as the winner. They just brought in the votes they needed. Martha McSally won, and they said, no, you ain't winning here. They brought in extra votes, added them in, counted them, and now Sinema's the winner. Same thing they're trying to do in Florida. Rick Scott doesn't seem like he's down for the count, but that's what they're trying to do. And so it's at our peril that we fail to accept what they're showing us. Not only must we accept that this is the new norm for the Democrats, but we have to decide, because it just becomes more and more obvious day by day who's on what side. The ones banging down people's door and intimidating women and children, that's the Democrats. It's not Republicans doing that. Republicans lost the House of Representatives. No one rioted. No one burned anything down. No one got even the slightest bit upset. I mean, I understand people were upset about the election result, but I didn't see any violence, no outward symptoms. Republicans did not get together and go burn anything down because the House of Representatives was lost. So you've got the Occupy Wall Street violent anarchists who Nancy Pelosi said God bless them. And those are the ones who were the parents, if you will, to the Antifa. Same people, same trainers, same people going around the country teaching folks. So the Democrats last took power in January of 2007. Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer took control of the final 2 years of George Bush's second term. And this was back in January of 2007. They laid the groundwork for the 2008 presidential election of Barack Obama, and they removed the budget process. Now, you're probably saying, well, Stacey, why do we care about what happened in 2007? Because it's instructive, because we've never returned to the budget process. They eliminated the federal budget process for fiscal year 2008. And that was after that was the precursor for Barack Obama to demand massive open-ended spending. And the lengthy budget process in 2008 was replaced by omnibus spending bills in fiscal year 2009. And then they had the TARP bailout, the auto bailout, ARRA, QE1. These were all accomplished with massive omnibus spending packages. Then, from that moment forward, even though the GOP took back control in January of 2011, the constraining budgetary process was forever destroyed. We have not had regular order budgetary spending since 2008 fiscal year. It's 2018. We've had 10 years of open-ended omnibus spending under Democrats and Republicans after the obliteration of the constraining budgetary process by the Democrats. That's what they were able to accomplish the last time they were swept into power. What do you think they have planned this time? The Marxists in the Democratic Party are going to kneecap the president with the power of the purse, and that is the biggest weapon the House of Representatives has. They're going to use budgets to structurally defund and dismantle ICE. They're going to prevent the border wall, and any other program, initiative, policy, or institution they want to see eliminated, they will go about doing it through their control of the purse. Our response to that is, number one, what were we thinking when we put them in charge again? And number two, it's time for prayer. Prayer and working towards 2020. All right, that's the show for today. I'll be back with you tomorrow. God bless and good night from the Heartland.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk,